What's going to happen at this year's New England Vegfest? It's April the 10th, 2018, and this is 50H, a show about Worcester. Our panel today is Vegfest coordinator Nicole Melone, Worcester coordinator and microphone coordinator Brendan Milliken, and me, Mike Benedetti. Today we're talking about Narcan, affordable housing, and Worcester's vegetarian renaissance. Brent crude oil is $70 a barrel, up 4% on the week. Bitcoin is $6,700, down 9% this week. You are listening to Unity Radio, broadcasting with 100,000 milliwatts of power on 102.9 FM and streaming at worcestermag.com. This show is also cablecasted on WCCA TV 194, podcasted at pieandcoffee.org, and live streamed to our Facebook page. Fingers crossed. You can call in live at 508-471-5265, and thanks to the mighty Hank Stoltz for engineering today's show.
Mike, I have a proposal here.
What's your proposal?
We've got a way that we can test whether or not this live stream to Facebook is actually working.
We could go to Facebook.
No, I need all three of us to just take our feet, right, and put it up on the table here. And if we're on Facebook right now, in 5 minutes, Steve Quest is going to send us a message yelling at us to tell us to take our feet off the table. So we don't mind a little bit of dead air. We're just going to sit here quietly with our feet up on the table, and we should be getting a message any second now from Steve Quist yelling at us to take our feet off the table.
Maybe I should go to Facebook on my phone, or Nicole should.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
Hi, come on. Pop right on there.
Hi, Nicole. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
The New England Vegfest is coming up, right?
It sure is. Yeah, very fast.
When and where is it, this big event?
Just about 3 weeks on April 29th, Sunday, at the DCU Center right here in Worcester, Mass. Yes, our little card. Because yeah, I need to be reminded of the date. The hours are 12 to 5 this year, but we do have a really special member preview hour from 11 to 12. The way to do that is by supporting Veg Worcester at member.vegfest.org, and for a mere $6 a month, you can support Veg Worcester and get into Vegfest early, free. Get a bunch of free stuff in a tote bag, and then there's all sorts of other perks. They're online, though. Go check it out.
Nicole, I want to ask you some questions.
Top of the list of perks is a 10% discount of vegan ice cream at Woodbury.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
That's right. Also,
it's the best one.
Vegan Nest, where we just ate lunch.
And Belmont Veg.
Nicole, my first question is, have you had a chance to read this week's Worcester City Council agenda?
I haven't.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that because I have a copy of it right here. So let me read you some notes and see what you think. This week, affordable housing and complete streets. Lodging houses. Councilor Bergman has an item held over from last week asking that existing multifamily homes not be considered lodging houses for city enforcement purposes. I do not understand this item. But Brendan, Paul Delaquila, understands this item and sent me an email explaining it to me.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul.
Do you have a guess as to what this is before we find out the answer?
Not really, other than I do remember probably 15 years ago we made some changes in the way that we treat homes where more than, I think it was 4 unrelated people occupy the home, which is
right.
like a significant portion of our rental units in
right.
the city are technically viewed as lodging homes. And a part of that went back to a period of time where we had a big transition to off-campus housing, but not enough like designated off-campus housing. So you ended up having students in particular renting, large numbers of students renting relatively small apartments. And then there were some communes and stuff that were going on that may have kicked the hornet's nest a little bit as well. But
it's interesting you say that, Brendan, but I don't think I think that's actually the wrong guess. My guess was I have no idea, so it's better than my guess. So Paul Delaquila asked me to preface this by saying that he's not an expert in this area.
So he might be wrong too.
Well, I'll also preface this by saying that in my opinion he is an expert in this area.
Okay.
He says, regarding this issue, the state building code has recently been updated and now defines a lodging house as a 1 to 2 family detached house with 5 or fewer guest rooms. A lodging house requires a certain standard of fire sprinkler system to be legal, and for example, in a case before the Spencer Zoning Board, an applicant is seeking a special permit to be allowed to rent out a room in his single-family house. Assuming the zoning board says yes, the applicant will have to install a fire sprinkler system satisfactory to the building inspector before he can rent a room in his house out. There may be other implications for triple-deckers as well, but I guess those are already considered multifamily under the code. So he thinks the code change might be a direct response to the proliferation of Airbnb-type services.
Which is why, isn't that why part of the state code is changing? Because the state just passed some more
Airbnb.
The state just passed some a law last week before regarding Airbnb. So there probably are some relatively new changes on that front.
What did the state pass regarding Airbnb?
just the way they were going to regulate them, and I didn't pay that much attention because I assume everyone's going to ignore the regs anyways.
Me neither. I got another exciting item. Nicole, maybe you have an opinion about this one as well. $1 million for the library. Christian to Jesus and about 50 others, this like 50 some people signed this, Brendan, this petition, citizen petition, asking the city manager to increase library spending by $1 million, quote, to expand books in the business section, world language books, classrooms, charging stations, recording studios, and video game stations to utilize the benefits of the library.
You sent me this last week, and I think it looks fantastic, right? Like you read the list but then you get to the number, and it's like all I can hear is Dr. Evil in my head, like 1 million. I mean,
this is why I love this
stuff. 50 now, because that's how things fall flat and they get ignored, right? I mean, if you have 50 people signing on to a petition, hopefully one of them is able to sit down with a spreadsheet and say, this is the actual dollar figure we need for spending. Like when it comes to municipal spending, it's not just pulling random numbers out of your pocket or your hat or whatever the case may be and throwing them at city officials. It's saying, like, look, these are the list of books we want. This is how much gaming stations cost. This is what a recording studio would cost. And here's the number, guys. Do you think you can help us out? Instead, it's, again, Dr. Evil. And I wish them luck, because it's a great idea.
Yeah, this petition does not come with, like, a statement of whatever, prices or anything. Gordon Davis has an item asking the Worcester Police Department to use body cameras. He doesn't have anything about $1 million, though. I wonder if he would get more traction with this if he had a big, if he was marketing this item better. He also has an item about hate crime statistics, asking the city to release hate crime statistics it sends to the state, and a report on how the Worcester Police Department prevents and investigates hate crimes. I don't know anything about hate crimes or hate crime statistics, really. So I don't know. He does mention that we apparently send some statistics to the state about this, and he's asking for these statistics.
Federal government, I believe, isn't it?
I don't know.
Whatever.
Do they send them to the federal government?
Well, all of our crime stats go to the federal government every year.
Are these not a public record already, do you think?
But it takes quite a bit of time for them to get to the federal government. It's usually 2 to 3 years before those are actually processed. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, on the front, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
On the
which front is that?
body count
Yeah.
front, though, is
Yeah.
I mean, with the state police in Boston both doing pilot programs, or the state police announcing it, I mean, we must be heading that general direction anyways, right? Second largest city in New England.
Are they having good luck with body cameras?
Boston doesn't seem to have any complaints with them. I'm sure there's some issues on the patrolmen's union side. That usually is the case, but the administration doesn't seem to have had many issues with the rollout, and the state police seems kind of eager to get them moving after some unfortunate incidents over the last few months with the Mass State Police.
Sure. Nicole, feel free to get a word in edgewise if you like.
No, I agree with both of you guys. I'm excited to see how this plays out.
Do you wear a GoPro at Vegfest?
I don't,
You could
but I
stream the whole-
should.
you should stream the
I
whole festival.
should.
We're gonna have vegan body cameras because it's gonna be a new requirement if you become a vegetarian. You're gonna be because otherwise, honestly, how can we audit the fact that you're a vegetarian if we don't
Yeah, it's
actually
true.
see the
It is
food
true.
that you
We should
interact
really
with?
keep everybody accountable.
Boards and commissions. Aaron Richmond will be reappointed to the Human Rights Commission, and the council will vote on appointing John Stewart and Kimberly Vanderspeck to the Election Commission. Didn't John?
I don't know. He's getting. Look at it, moved everything already. Yeah, I have no idea, Mike. I don't pay attention to much commissions these days.
Affordable
Much on the
housing.
the commission front.
What are you doing with our camera?
I'm trying to change the volume so we stop having dinging going off in the background. I thought I turned it.
So on the affordable housing front, the manager has a report noting he's committed or spent $23.4 million.
It's feedback. It's feedback coming in. You get alerts coming up and everything now, Mike.
All right, that sounds a little bit better.
Oh yeah, your phone is. Oh, sorry. Okay.
This is, yeah, that was beautiful. That was actually quite relaxing. That was,
Yeah.
It was very nice.
We should, I don't want to cut myself short here,
Meditation
but
at
maybe
the
we should
end.
just think about an hour of white noise.
You know,
A nice flowing
really-
river or a
What
breeze.
do you think, 12, 1 a.m.?
We'll just all
12 p.m., 1
Seriously,
a.m.,
I
you just-
actually
there'll
stream
be a
that
time
stuff.
for you to
Yeah.
put that on.
I was thinking more like
should do
1
it.
p.m. on Tuesdays and we could just take a nap. We'll come together and just relax. We'll tell people we're doing a show.
This is why people listen to the show, to learn more about video production. make sure that you mute the phone before you start recording the show. The manager has a report noting we've committed or spent $23.4 million over the past 7 years to develop and preserve 1,849 affordable housing units. 13.4% of our housing is affordable. According to the report, we have more subsidized housing inventory than the next 11 towns and cities in Worcester County combined. Take that, Holden.
Wow.
This reminds me of a couple of recent articles about taxes and housing prices. We've got this article, this editorial from the Worcester Business Journal from last week called "Worcester, Sutton Reap What They Sow." In Worcester, the tax rate for commercial and industrial properties is $34.03 per $1,000 valuation. In Sutton, the tax rate for all properties is $16.55. And Brendan, they're mostly talking about the company Prime Metals Technologies moving out of Worcester.
I mean, but that and Allegro announced last week are huge losses to the city.
Yes,
I mean, ridiculous in terms of employment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 600 jobs or something. But he said that they meant, but it's interesting that they mentioned. I mean, they mentioned that there was a lot of reasons Prime Metal moves, but they also mention that Sutton is giving the company a 67% reduction in its property tax bill through a 15-year tax increment financing agreement. So that's like a really low, I mean, that's like a pretty good TIF.
It's a great TIF, but I mean, I think that's part of the bummer too, though, is that, Worcester has been handing out TIFs like, it's a door
Left and
prize lately. But there's still nothing you can do to compete with the crazy starting rate to begin with, and on paper that has a big impact on things.
What about, I'm just thinking if they're slashing it by 67%, can't you just call it zero?
I guess you could, but I mean, at the same time,
I mean, you could just say, well, how about no taxes? How about free TIF for 15 years?
Or how about we just say, maybe it's time that Worcester start actually taking seriously the idea that our commercial tax rate is now, it's absolutely, it's in ridiculous level. Like we're approaching absurd level.
I'm not going to argue that it's not, but I'm going to argue that this is not a good example of that happening because the Sutton tax rate is irrelevant for this, at least for the next 15 years, because Sutton is saying don't worry about our tax rate.
Sort of, but on paper, it doesn't hash itself out that way.
Why not?
Well, because your accountant is going to look at your liabilities on top of what you're actually getting as a kickback. So I mean, it's a tax incentive financing, right, agreement. So it's not
Right.
it's not just making things go away.
Oh,
it's
okay. What's going on with that?
It's an accounting problem. It's an accounting issue, right? So I mean, you're still, whether you're paying something out of your pocket and getting a return on that, then I have no idea what I'm talking about, making things up, Mike. But no, I mean, that's not what Sutton is doing, is erasing their tax base. They're giving a relatively short term. We're talking 15 years, right? I mean,
right.
So in the life of a large company like this, it's not that long of a period of time. So it just becomes a rounding error for the town of Sutton to retain employment, bring more jobs into the community, increase their tax base from the labor force that's going to be down there, and all the accessory stuff that goes along with it as well too. And so at the end, you can make an argument that they gain something from it because there's more human beings in the town of Sutton.
Yes.
Whereas we're losing something that isn't probably going to be replaced, specifically because we have a commercial tax rate that is through the roof and doesn't actually make any sense.
So you're saying that you think that even though the taxes are very low for 15 years, the fact that they're going to pop back up in 15 years is the relevant thing here.
I think that's part of it's part of the equation, right? You're making a long-term decision on a property acquisition.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's kind of what you're looking at. If you were going to go to buy a house and somebody said to you that, hey, we're not going to make you pay any taxes for the first 10 years, but then at year 10, they're going to be 35% of the value of your home. Like, if you're not totally flush with cash and you took that deal, like, you're kind of not good at math.
I think it seems like it's an interesting game theory issue to me, or interesting political issue to me, the idea of saying, like, we're kind of making a bet now on what Sutton is going to decide to do in setting its commercial taxes 15 years from now. Like, for all we know, there's some sort of socialist takeover of Sutton 14 years from now, and property taxes go through the roof, and then Prime Metals is like, we were foiled.
No, totally. But I think the other way to look at that, too, is that here in Worcester, where I believe one thing you and I agree on is that this is the place that we care about, not Holden.
The only place.
The only place, right. Part of the problem we're facing now is you're starting to see property owners on the commercial side that you're starting to toe the line of property owners that could actually have a long-term impact on our operating budget. So the Greendale Mall is always the big one that scares people. When you look at the dollar figures attached to that property, it's an amount of money that actually would have an impact on the city's ability to do business. these two businesses that are long-standing businesses here in the city of Worcester, picking up and moving, and not moving very far, right? We're not talking
Right.
like they're moving to Mexico.
Right.
Well, actually, I think Prime Metals
Prime
does have
Metals is
some-
moving like 60 jobs to Ohio, but most of these are staying in state.
are staying in states, right? So it's not an argument about Massachusetts is too expensive to do business. It's not an argument about proximity to Boston.
Worcester County being a bad place.
Right. It's literally just the difference of a couple miles, from the perspective of the rest of the world, just like throwing a dart at Massachusetts, the central part of Massachusetts on a map. And it comes down to taxes. That's something we should be talking about.
Well, now my next article, now I have a secret theory that I've just developed around this next article, because I was going to say, we're hurting our economy so much that demand outstrips supply as central mass housing market heats up. That we saw housing prices in Worcester, median price of a single-family home in Worcester in 2017 going up 9% over 2016.
Yeah.
But maybe this is like the thing that we were arguing about last week about whether giving seniors tax abatements just means that more people want to move into senior housing, which means the price of senior housing goes up, which means it not any cheaper to be on a fixed income. That this is a similar deal, that you cut Worcester property taxes, and then people are like, great, moving to Worcester is great, and now there's more people want to move to Worcester, and now the price of houses goes up an equal amount to the amount that taxes went down.
Right. Well, no, I think that is part of the problem too. And Worcester's kind of in a weird spot right now on that front, where if you look at, especially over on the west side of Worcester or the west side of Park Avenue, housing prices are just really now starting to break through where they were around 2008 when the market collapsed. And a lot of it has to do with burn code. The burn code area in particular being a little bit more desirable over the last couple of years as people are more and more commuting to Boston, and you got better highway access. So home prices tended to rise a little bit faster over there. I think people are going to be shocked now that the market has kind of corrected itself. People are looking to put their homes on the market to recover losses that they may have taken a decade ago. And along with that is likely to come increases in your property taxes as well. And it's just a weird system where it doesn't seem like anybody is actually winning. You still have two sides of an argument yelling at each other that the only proper solution is that both of them pay the least amount of taxes possible without recognizing they're kind of in it together.
They should both pay the same amount.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think, easy. I mean, I'm not generally like a flat tax kind of, I'm not going back to Ross Perot here, but
I think this is just aesthetic principles.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't they be the same? It's gonna look more pretty on the graph and whatnot.
It does, yeah. It's one line,
I
instead
can't
of two volatile lines.
Well, Brendan, you'll be excited to know that the sewer rate is going to go up 3%. The manager would like to increase the sewer rate. Quote, the Department of Public Works and Parks recommendation for water and sewer rates for fiscal year 18 will increase the annual combined bill for a single family home by $19.
So now all of our human waste is going to start moving to Holden and Sutton and whatever.
This recommendation is significantly less than the average combined rate increase of 4.7% over the last 10 years.
It's exciting news. Can we talk? Let's talk about something other than sewers.
I feel like we need to move to a commercial break to pump ourselves back up. Hank Stoltz, are we ready for that? All right. We'll be back in just a second with 508, a show about Worcester.
You know what it is?
Should I go
These
on
lights
it
are
now?
on.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
we're on the yeah. This is why Nicole's invisible.
My-
See? Now we're alive.
Nobody could see you before, so
Oh,
don't worry
really?
about it.
Okay, well,
Yeah. You were like in a cave.
Ugh.
Where should we put? There's really no good place to put this, is there? For better visibility.
Yeah,
You
we're
know, if
almost all in there. No, it's one of those things that are like,
Oh, it's Instagram.
yeah. Can I do one of these? Oh, yeah, there
Look
we
at
go.
that.
Nice, good move.
Cool.
Nice work.
You'll fit in there nicely.
All right. So I think we should talk about the Vegfest next. I have a ton of
Yeah.
stuff here about Narcan. If you want to talk about Narcan.
We were already half asleep. I think we should,
Oh, I should make sure everyone can hear us. Can you guys hear us?
What if you put it in front of her microphone, the turtle voice statue picture?
Oh, right, because she's sitting to the
Can you
side.
guys hear these guys?
I can't hear us, we're not talking.
Well, it's not hooked up to a mic, you never know.
You're carrying around Narcan with you, Emily?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that's
I never
beautiful.
traveled far without a little Narcan.
So it's definitely.
Are we actually broadcasting on Facebook here?
Oh, yeah.
It's working, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Did you yell at me for putting my shoes on?
I didn't realize that there was a delay
Oh, is there a delay?
from what I'm seeing here to what I am seeing on.
There's a
Which
delay
do you
on
prefer?
the phone.
Do you prefer the live
Oh.
version, or do you prefer the
Hey,
delayed
Mike, can you
version?
move your mic a little bit so
I
we can
am hearing, but yeah.
Which
get
way?
the bass?
This way?
Yeah,
You guys should move this way. Brendan, you're right at the edge of the thing.
Yeah, you're slinging microphones around. I don't want to get hit with something over here. The only other thing we should do, Mike, is take some little pencils at the end of the show. We're going to trace out all of our microphone stands.
So we're ready to come back from the break here in a second?
Yes, you are, anytime.
There we go.
Live!
Oh,
That wasn't it.
sorry. Well, I was gonna wait for her to sit down.
Live from our studio in a basement down an alley in downtown Worcester. This is 508 with Mike Benedetti, Vegfest, Nicole Melone, and the city of Worcester's Brendan Melican. Hi guys.
How are you?
Everyone.
Doing good. Hey, Nicole,
Yes.
tell me about the New England Vegfest this year.
Oh, well.
You sounded exasperated.
I know, I'm just so excited.
It's an exciting thing.
It is. There's a lot.
Can I pump myself up and talk a little bit about
Please,
veg-
please do.
This is like Worcester's vegetarian renaissance, man. We've been talking about this on the show for a long time, and it continues to be a renaissance.
Yeah, no,
I can't believe it.
When we started talking about this, we were just getting leftover cookies at your place, and it was like
This is just one of these things where there was just I can't imagine how many years this pent up vegetarian
Yeah.
energy in the city of Worcester, and then once people started organizing around it, even the unlikely characters who made up Veg Worcester at the time, once they started organizing around it, they just hit it. It just did it. Like it was just like setting off dynamite.
Yeah, we've got a big stack of the rack cards for the event down at the store, and it's absolutely amazing how many conversations it starts with completely random people. The only thing that might start more conversations is our Rebel Alliance flag that's hanging out in front of the store
Ooh,
currently.
I meant to ask about that actually.
Would you like to share?
Well,
We'll talk about it
yeah,
after the show,
I'd love
okay.
to know more.
So,
So yeah, let's get into the details.
So we're talking about the New England Veg Fest,
We are, yep. This is the ninth year that we've hosted this in Worcester.
and this is the second year that it's been branded as the New England Veg Fest.
Oh, I think we're
Right.
actually on the fourth.
Fourth year?
Yeah.
First of all, I just love that idea because why not be the New England Veg Fest if you can pick your name?
Oh, yeah,
And plus,
yeah.
it's a huge Veg Fest. It kind of is the New England Veg Fest.
It is. We have we have representation from all over the U.S. and Canada, so it's so much larger. Than
It's really the
Veg
North
Fest.
American Veg Fest.
I mean, we're up there. We're up there with some of the biggest ones in the country. We get about an audience of 12,000. That's what we're expecting this year. 150 vendors that are all plant-based, if not, at least veg-friendly. The
Yeah.
event itself is 100% vegan, which really blows people away. But before I forget, it's Sunday, April 29th,
Okay.
which is like 3 weeks away. It's right here in Worcester at the DCU Center, 12 to 5.
Uh-huh.
We do have a special member preview hour, which you can learn more about that online.
And so if people have been to this before, this is just basically the DCU. It's just full of all these people who are like giving you food samples. You could buy a bunch of food. You can go to people's wacky booths and talk to them about wacky stuff or get some free samples. Happiness Pony will be there handing out issues of Happiness Pony. Like you said, there'll be bands, there'll be speakers.
Yes.
Who are speakers this year?
So, yes, speakers. We are very pleased to announce that Miyoko Shinner is going to be our main speaker. She is an amazing woman who, aside from all her activism that she does, she also makes an amazing vegan cheese, and it is seriously taking over the world. She'll be there to talk about the future of food and where she sees all this going and her role in it and our role in it, and she's going to really bring a great presentation.
Mm-hmm.
We also have Honey LeBronx. She is a vegan drag queen. She will be emceeing the Veg Fest this year, as well as doing a workshop on communications. And we also have a cooking demo from a local chef, Chef Kevin Williams from Roots Natural Foods in Leominster.
And all this stuff is free. Like
It
there's
is
things
free.
that you could spend money there, but you could also go there. It could be free.
Oh, it's hard not to spend money there, but you can get in the doors for free. You can see these speakers for free. You can try a bunch of vegan food for free. There is live music. We have a kids area.
It's going to be a lot larger than in years past. Like physically
It is.
a lot larger.
This is going to be the biggest one.
It's like
We've expanded our exhibiting area.
It's like a third more floor space.
Yeah. Yep. I know. We went for this is the first year that this is the biggest year we've ever the biggest we've ever been, the most vendors we've ever had, the most food options we've ever had. It's very exciting. It's gonna be fun.
Do you have any questions, Brendan?
I think it's all been covered. I want to hear more, but no, I've got nothing, Mike.
Nicole, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Central Mass,
Uh-huh.
in Clinton specifically.
How was that?
It wasn't bad. It is what you make it.
How did it go becoming a vegetarian in Clinton?
Ooh, okay. Well, I didn't really turn that corner until college.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to college at Birmingham State, and it was actually pretty easy there.
Mhm.
Lots of French fries in the dining hall.
Okay.
And, you know, it's been a 10-year path. You find out how to make it work for yourself, and it's been great. It's been the best decision I've ever made.
How did you get from there to being the lead organizer for the New England Vegfest?
Someone knew, so before this, and I guess currently I'm still an artist, and I used to organize artisan markets here in New England, and someone tagged me in a post. The organizers of Veg Worcester were looking for someone to help out, and someone tagged me, and it just worked out.
And you've been doing it for years now.
This is the third one.
Yeah.
So three of 9. So
Not like a decade,
third, a third of the Veg Fest have been under my reign.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Are you going to keep doing it for the indefinite future?
I don't know, Mike.
Are these two nosy questions?
So I
Who
actually,
knows? Yeah, who knows?
Mike's obviously getting too personal here.
Sorry.
So I'm not vegan or vegetarian. But, I mean, we've kind of had this conversation before, but I think it's one that people on Facebook might actually find somewhat interesting. If you're somebody that hasn't pulled the trigger on like a
Yep.
food lifestyle change or a philosophical change in eating habits, what would be your top 3 food items? Say someone who's going down to VegFest, and I don't want you to feel uncomfortable having to name like brands or whatever,
No,
but
I
like,
would love
what
to.
would be the 3 things that you think could actually convince someone that this is a change in their food diet habits that they could actually make without
Well,
feeling the pain?
here's my recommendation. So VegFest is open and free, so there's no risk in going.
Mhm.
And we pretty much represent 3 things. We represent amazing vegan food that's available locally and globally, and it's around. We also represent a lot of animal rights groups that kind of cover why should this be considered as an ethical choice. And then we also have a lot of environmental groups and community groups. So those 3 things, that's really the biggest selling point. All the food is amazing. I am going to plug Vegan Treats because they've won many awards, and they currently have a 90-minute line every year consistently to get their food. So it's really great.
See, for me on the food side, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
And that's the important part above all else. And I mean, that's not to be dismissive of people's philosophical rationale for changing diet and what have you, but quality and deliciousness of food for me is kind of like the most important thing. And I could probably, it's probably happened today where I've made tried to convince myself that I could live off of nothing but snacks. So when you mention something like Vegan Treats, like to me it's like, oh yeah, okay, I can be a vegan then. There's at least 4 times a day where I could get away with being totally vegan.
Yeah.
And that's a start. It's better than not being at all.
I would say I think the bar is set for a lot of vegan food entrepreneurs because they know they're trying to prove something to you, and there's so much care is put into it, so much research. I mean, vegans are going to care a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's just, I think, the standard. And I think just come on down, check everybody out. And I mean, specifically Vegan Treats and Vegan Nest, which I know they both have the word vegan in their name, but they're just cutting right to the point. But Vegan Nest is right here around the corner.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been there before.
I have not. I was going to try to come today, but I was running late. So
Yeah, we
I
were
couldn't
just
do it.
there. They're fantastic. They'll be there. They'll be having brunch that morning too.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I got to cut you guys off because we got to go to another commercial break.
Typical Mike.
This is 508, Worcester's Libertarian Voice. We'll be back in just a second with more.
Let me go check it.
But technically, we're still here.
Yeah, we are still here. We're still live on Facebook, right?
And Instagram.
We are.
Instagram.
This is
Yeah,
still being
we do.
recorded. Yeah.
So how is it how is it picking up on? Is it just from the sound of the voice, or are you doing that, Mike? So like right now it's in a 3 shot. Actually, you just got up and walked away. But Like, how does it decide who it is going to?
It can do it based on a face recognition
Yeah,
thing.
or if I start waving my hands around, which I try not to do
Really
here
interesting.
because I'll
It's really
steal
very
focus
good
from
at
it.
it.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it manually because we've always
you
had
are?
we
Okay.
we've had problems. I think unless it can see our faces really well, we've
Yeah.
had problems with it just making bizarre decisions. Like the old studio, sometimes it would just decide someplace up on the ceiling was up somebody's face.
Right.
It was crazy. It was
So
crazy.
you are directing it.
I am directing it,
But
but
you're doing a fabulous job.
this is part of the
Well,
reason
that's
that I'm not
awesome.
paying
I was
attention to anything
wondering
else on the
what
show.
you
Yeah, Mike.
Do we
Great
want to
job.
talk more about vegetarianism? Do we want to talk more about Worcester? Do we want to talk about Narcan? What do we want to talk about?
I think we should leave that up to the person here promoting Veg Worcester, to whether or not we're going to, or New England Vegfest.
Oh yeah, what else? Let's see.
Any boxes you'd like to tick off on that front?
I mean, I think we plugged the date. I do want to remind people to, I might want to give them a link or something.
Yeah. Give it to them now.
Yeah.
Here we are on the internet.
Yeah, here we are. So yeah, if you guys are all on Facebook, just go over to the Veg Worcester, search Veg Worcester or New England Vegfest. We kind of got a lot of social media profiles,
Yeah.
but New England Vegfest, RSVP on the event page. There's going to be tons of links to, go sign up to be a member, support Veg Worcester. We're a nonprofit, and I'll be back.
Yeah, we got about a minute worth of music, but if you want
Oh,
to come
nice.
right back, we can come right back.
Yeah.
This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full and descend. The horse is the white of the eye, and dark within. This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full and descend. The horse is the white of the eye, and dark within. And this is Brendan Milligan, and this is Nicole Melone, and this is 508, a show about Worcester. Hi guys, how's it going?
I'm really happy that you were laughing at that, too, Nicole. Sometimes I
That's
feel like I'm
great.
losing my mind trapped down here in the
No,
basement with Mike.
no,
as
I
he-
feel perfectly
But
sane.
yeah, no, this is great.
Oh, I want to ask you at least two more things. One is just about, I don't know what I want to ask you about.
No.
Like, whenever you were talking about like what vegan foods do you eat, like somehow that was just really got me distracted, and I was just thinking a lot about food.
No, well, I know. I know that probably sounds because I'm sitting with two folks that are vegan, right? So I mean, it's gonna kind of like that sounds probably like a stupid question, but like it's still one of those things. I think if you think back to when you made that decision in the first place, it's like, oh my God, what am I going to live off of? Especially as an adult, like I get people coming in all the time into the store. Who, if I get them to who are not vegan, right, have no dietary restrictions at all, and I love having them sample their vegan ice cream because I've gotten really happy with the texture and where it's at from just an ice cream perspective, not a vegan ice cream perspective, but that's kind of as far as I can go is like discussing the thing that's right in front of them right now, and there's almost no value. It's almost diminishing the idea that they're whether you approach it from a philosophical perspective, from a general health and nutrition perspective. I think there's a lot of value within the vegan community that sometimes doesn't necessarily get too far out of the vegan community unless you're talking to a specifically captive audience. And this this event is probably the most captive audience in the region. But like, how does the Vegan Nest go about saying, hey, come on in and try this? No, really, it's not boring food. Like, we're doing legit delicious stuff, and
so
even if
great.
you're not a vegan, you're going to have a fantastic meal.
It is a good place. It is a good place. I have to say, I mean, it does feel like if somebody from China said to me, like, so in America, what do you guys eat?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I never really think about trying to explain my diet.
Yeah.
And is it, like I eat oatmeal in the morning with some flaxseed. Maybe that's kind of weird. I eat a
Yeah.
vitamin B12 pill, a vitamin D pill.
Me too. I did that this morning.
I eat like some soup, some bean soup, and some bread and some salad for lunch.
Yeah.
Kind of eat whatever for dinner. I think I used to be much more like, I'll eat this fake sausage or this fake whatever, this vegan. Like I don't have any soy milk in my refrigerator. I don't think I have any. Actually, one of my housemates might have some tofu in our refrigerator or in our freezer probably. But yeah, I feel
It's
like
been there for like 3 years, and it's,
at some point I feel like
saving it for a special
At some point I
occasion.
feel like you just decide like, all right, I'm going to eat like whatever sort of normal food doesn't have animals in it that I like to eat, and
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna. You just figure it out.
But so
Yeah,
from
yeah.
a culinary perspective, though, too, I think there's a lot of value, and you kind of honed in on this, too, that you've got people at this festival in particular that are coming in, like, to show off. They're coming in to step up
Yes.
their game. There's
Oh, yeah.
super talented chefs in the community. So, like, you're kind of making a joke about tofu and, on one end, and then on the other end, like, personally, you've decided this is just kind of the dietary road that I'm going down. But again, right next door, we've got, like, legit chefs that are doing fantastic things with food. Whether you're vegan or not, the food is delicious. And like, I think that's the important thing, that there's still a lot of misinformation about dietary restrictions that probably don't even exist anymore, right? And on the baking side in particular, like I tend to go after vegan baked goods because I just like them better.
Do you really?
I do, yeah, especially cookies. I don't know why. There's something about vegan cookies that almost universally, as long as they're softer cookies.
It's like the coconut oil, I think, is what it is. Like it's such a binding.
I don't, because I totally love butter. Like butter is one of my favorite things imaginable. So yeah, like I can't imagine what it is that's changing it. But like I've found few vegan baked goods that I don't actually like as much or prefer from their non-vegan counterparts.
I think that the lower saturated fat usually means that it's not going to be anywhere near as rich, which means you can probably eat way more. So to the extent that you really like the fat content and like the bulkiness of baked good, which you certainly could, like a donut.
Like have you seen me recently?
But like to
I
the
actually
extent that you
got
like
caught in a breeze on the way down here. Like I'm not worried about fats. This
I
is
mean,
like this is
like,
actually what I'm going for here.
to the extent that you like the sugar high part of eating
Sure.
desserts or the sweetness of eating desserts, I mean, it's the difference between being like, oh, I can eat a piece of that cake and then that's about the limit, to being like, I could just eat that cake. If push comes to shove, I could 100% eat that cake because it doesn't have so much goopiness to it.
You've never seen the cake, Mike.
That's got to be my favorite thing about
Yeah.
eating vegan. You can eat as much as you want.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I would even with non-vegan food. That's Mike. You and I should go out to eat sometime. I'm gonna show you a thing or two about eating cake.
We should. You know, Nicole,
I'll be there.
I wanted to ask you about a book that you co-edited and designed last year.
I did.
Probably the best book to come out of Worcester last year. It's called The Spirit at Your Elbow, a Happiness Pony Quinquennial Reader. Tell me about this project.
Well, I feel like my part in it is nowhere near as exciting as your part in it. This is a collection of everything that's been almost everything that's been in Happiness Pony,
Yeah.
which is
a Worcester newspaper about art and history.
yeah. So we put it all together in this book, which we have an amazing cover. But Allie did this,
Allie
right?
did this cover. She actually needle pointed this cover. This is a real.
Can you
this is
zoom
a real.
in on this?
I
Is
don't
this
know
like
if
a
I can.
thing?
How much I can. Yeah, you can
Put it
just
under my
hold it.
face.
Yeah, just put it in front of your face and push it right at the camera. Anyway, people listening on the radio are just wondering what the heck we're doing.
What's going on?
Yeah, this is a really fun project, and I'm still reading it. A lot of these for the first time because this is over 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is on my coffee table. It's one of my proudest achievements.
It's definitely one of my proudest achievements. I'm glad.
As it should be.
I'm glad it's on your list too. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Anyway.
Does it rank higher than drawing 12,000 people to downtown Worcester? Or
Oh, they're two totally
even?
different, endeavors.
Nobody's into dangerous comparisons today. I want to go down the dangerous comparison road.
You know what it is? They're both organizing. So I organized
And
this, and I'm
because-
organizing Vegfest. I think
Because they're both done out of love.
I
You
love
can't compare
solving
them.
problems and making sense of things.
making Worcester a better place.
Making Worcester a better place.
Central Mass a better place.
Yeah.
Speaking of Central Mass, Brendan, I just wanted to bring some of your attention here.
No, please do.
This is an article, of course. Where is it? This is from the Telegram and Gazette. This article is called "Holden Man Accused of Fleeing Police, Ramming Worcester Cruiser" by George Barnes.
What
And
was the first word in that headline?
the first phrase in the headline is Holden Man, and it made me realize how rarely I see that in the headline, and how I would like to see the Telegram start making this their Florida Man.
I was just going to say, if there's if there's an entrepreneurial person who's looking at Twitter right now saying to themselves, how can I make Twitter a better place? I think we need a Holden Man
We
account.
need an ampersand or at Holden Man.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe it only gets used once every decade or so, but when it gets used, it's
No.
going to be awesome.
It's going to get used all the time because George Barnes is going to step up and he's going to have a Holden Man every day in the Telegram.
Actually, you know what, Mike? I'm going to ask you to do this for next week's show. I
Yeah.
think we need to start pulling the police blotter from Holden.
And we'll have a segment called Holden Man.
We'll just have a Holden Man segment, and we'll just go through all the absurd crimes that have taken place either in the town of Holden or outside of Holden line, where
Well, this is an example of somebody from Holden bringing
Yeah.
the lawlessness that they're known for to the city of
the
Worcester.
city of Worcester. It's awful. I've been saying this for years to elected officials on the west side of Worcester that we need to be building a wall. I mean, this is Trump is not the first person to propose absurd walls, Mike, and I think this is one of those things for the safety and sanity of the citizens of Worcester.
People love walls.
We need a giant wall along the Holden side of the city.
What would you name it?
I don't know, bales of hay. I'm not going to spend a lot on this.
Rocks. Just deconstruct. Just take apart all of those old stone walls that are in the woods between Worcester and
Maybe that's what
Holden.
we do.
Make them all one.
We go over to where the reservoir is, and we just start blasting again over the cliffside where the reservoir is, and we'll just have a rock slide down.
I'm against this wall. I'm 100% against this wall. I'm going to be the first person out there doing civil disobedience when you try to build your so-called Holden Wall, Brandon.
How about a toll road then? Would you be down for a toll road?
I'm against tolls. I'm against anything. Open borders between Worcester and Holden.
Okay.
That's what I'm in favor of. Paul Cooney is texting your phone, so I'm not able to direct the show properly.
Oh, come on.
So, can I talk about Narcan for like 5 minutes?
Here, no, talk about Narcan. Yeah.
So first of all,
Can I take a look at that? It's
Narcan.
been a long time
You
since
can take my Narcan and you pry it out of my cold dead fingers.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen one of the more modern setups. So
That's it? That's all it is? There's nothing...
There was a working.
Nicole and I are both
Looking at the Narcan. Yeah, it's on a two-shot of both of you, so all this stuff is in there. There's a working paper that came out this week that has gotten a huge amount of press. And Brendan, I know you are somewhat knowledgeable about drug policy. This is from Jennifer Doliak of the University of Virginia and Anika Mukherjee of the University of Wisconsin at Madison. It's called The Moral Hazard of Life-Saving Innovations, Naloxone Access, Opioid Abuse, and Crime. Here's the abstract. The United States is experiencing an epic of opioid abuse. In response, many states have increased access to naloxone, a drug that can save lives when administered during an overdose. However, naloxone access may unintentionally increase opioid abuse through two channels. First, reducing the risk of death per use, thereby making riskier opioid use more appealing. And second, saving the lives of active drug users who survive to continue abusing opioids. By increasing the number of opioid abusers who need to fund their drug purchases, naloxone access laws may also increase theft. We exploit the staggered timing of naloxone access laws to estimate the total effects of these laws. We find that broadening naloxone access led to more opioid-related emergency room visits and more opioid-related theft with no reduction in opioid-related mortality. These effects do vary by region, and they found that the most detrimental effects were in the Midwest, which had a 14% increase in opioid-related mortality that they correlated with increased access to Narcan. This is obviously a controversial paper, but
I mean, if all I read was the summary, it kind of sounds like the takeaway there is, what the real solution to this problem is, Mike, is we just need more people to die.
Well-
The problem right now is not enough people are dying, and once all the people die, I mean, that's obviously a dangerous road to go down.
Well, I want to come back.
You run out of people to die.
I want to
Yeah.
come back to this, but
Yeah.
I want to say that this is something that I totally missed from the Boston Globe last October, an article by Felice Fryer called 10% Revived by Narcan in Massachusetts Died Within a Year.
Okay.
1 in 10 people who were revived from an overdose by Narcan died within a year. It initially saved most of the people it was used on. Only 6.5% died the day they received the medication. But among those who survived the first day, 9.9% died within a year, with a median age of 54. Among those who died, nearly 40% did so outside of the hospital, and more than half passed away in the first month.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, to me, that's the real takeaway, which is if somebody revives you with Narcan, you're probably going to survive that day, but you're probably going to die that month.
Which is kind of, unfortunately, where things head with opiate addiction to begin with. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a narrowing funnel of addiction, which is part of the problem. And I think this is one of those areas where the Globe, I think, has done a disastrous and detrimental style of coverage regarding the opioid crisis for the last couple of years, because we always get jammed up focusing on political solutions or say like funding for Narcan, and then we focus on that one thing.
Speaking of which, state funds for overdose reversing Narcan run dry. We've been funding Narcan with a big settlement that the state attorney general made with the company Amphastar Pharmaceuticals in 2015, and that money is gone. So now Narcan is going up to $71 a box from, I don't know, $50-something a box. Why can't I find the information? It's like a
significant.
78% jump in the price of Narcan. I mean, the commercial rate for it is like 125. So it's
Right.
we're still getting cheap Narcan, just not as cheap Narcan.
I think ultimately the problem is that we're still not having real conversations about the relationship between the war on drugs and as well the actual causes and solutions to things like drug addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, talk to the majority of people who work actively in the addiction field, and we still are almost entirely focused on things like 12-step programs and whatnot as being the solution to a rather large and overwhelming problem. And there's never been any science or data to back that mode of thinking up. I mean, there's actually more coming out of Canada in terms of using ibogaine for drug addiction than there is in the entire pool of data highlighting that 12-step programs have any value at all. It's not to say it doesn't work for some people and that there aren't good outcomes attached to it, but it doesn't get to the heart of the actual problem that we've been dealing for 100 years with a relatively similar train of addiction issues, and at no point in time have folks in policy-making capacities had the testicular fortitude to stand up and say, okay, this is silly, we're just ignoring problems, kicking them down the road. Let's actually start using real science, data, and medicine to help people.
What's the solution to drug addiction?
You know what the solution is? And I'll be honest with you, I know you're asking me to be snarky, but the solution goes back to the old rat experiment, right? Like we used to,
Yes.
with cocaine, like the original like groundbreaking study on addiction, you had 2 water bottles and a couple rats, and they always went to the water bottle that had cocaine in it, right? And that was like the study showing that, like, see, look, like once you're addicted, then you're just stuck there. The problem is that was only half the study, and we never actually talked about the other half of it too, that it wasn't this like overwhelming despair in rats based on 2 water bottles. The second round of the study was filling the rat cage with things to do, right? Like things that actually engaged the rats. And then suddenly, even with the cocaine water sitting there, the rats would rather run around their hamster wheel or whatever else was going on. And that's part of the problem, is that like giving people a purpose, giving people a reason to be alive and actually enjoy themselves. And look, I've been pretty open with this throughout the years. I am no stranger to the idea of putting funny stuff in your body, and I'm not shy to talk about that at all. I think even that is a part of the conversation as well, too. You go down to the Common any day and find a number of people, and there's no shortage of people who are using weed to take the edge off of other addiction
They're not using it on the
issues.
Common because they'll be kicked out of the Common if they're smoking on the Common.
As someone who has smoked weed on the Common plenty of times, Mike, I can tell you that no, that's not actually the truth. I know it's illegal, but
Common all the time for smoking weed.
yeah, well, I know, but that's bad weed smokers, Mike.
Okay.
I mean, there's people smoking weed on every
They're doing it
corner
on
of the
the side.
city. I mean,
That's definitely true. That's definitely true.
I mean, especially now with vape pens. I mean, would you know
Yeah.
that
Oh,
it's
yeah,
actually
you wouldn't know.
smoking? It was using oils. But
You know, I wanna say I think that what you say about the cause of the drug crisis being a sort of alienation from self and society.
well, you said that much better than I did.
I think that this is actually something which a lot of people would agree about around a lot of things. Like the previous radio show that shall not be named to this one, they were talking about, should we have cops and armed guards in schools? And they were like, well, these kids today. I mean, we wouldn't have had a generation ago, but these kids today. And I feel like that, like, to me, it's like, what's wrong with these kids today? If there's anything wrong with them, I mean, by most statistics, actually, these kids today are very docile. They don't use drugs. They don't hurt people. They don't have sex. But if there's anything wrong with these kids today, it's alienation from self and society.
Yeah.
I think we would agree about that on a lot of things. I feel like the reason that no judge says in a drug court says, "Hey, like you used to be an addict, and I need you to do something to stop." Like, what's he going to tell you to do? I mean, he's going to tell you to join AA or whatever, but what's he going to tell you to do with your alienation problem?
Right.
Like, what does the judge say that you then do and then your alienation problem is fixed? I have no idea.
No, I'm with you. And this is, again, and I love literally everybody who was at that table earlier. The young woman who was holding the camera I don't know very well. Walter's a good friend. Roger's
I don't
as
love
close
them
to
all.
family as you could get. But to be honest with you,
Walter
yeah,
Bird knows how I feel about him.
that is actually, I think, the problem right there. I mean, we were listening to people talking about students as if they're feral animals, right? I mean, it's absurd, right? I mean, and this is coming from somebody who, like, I am both now, I think, something resembling an adult, and I also have a child, right?
Your child is very well behaved, though.
Well, that was going to be my point.
You don't know about these kids.
I
today.
wasn't. In the 90s, like, and I can only speak for us early 90s kids, we were awful human beings. We were terrible. And you go back to the 80s, I mean, you had you kind of crossed Hank through the 80s at one point in time. We never talk about this stuff, that was the height of the crack cocaine epidemic. That was the height of violent crime here in Worcester. But then today, right? We just had three. I think they announced last week three shootings in Worcester last year, right? I mean, it's
That's
like
it.
yeah.
That's
Was that the number that came out last year, Hank? I mean, it's a relatively low number.
We haven't had a death by homicide by gun in well over a year.
So
Not until right now.
I know, but I guess my
Do we
point.
need to go to a commercial break?
I'll just wrap it up quick. I mean,
After we get this.
we have never seen more well-behaved children, to your point, Mike.
Yes.
If there's a problem especially with addiction in young people, it's not because they're maniacs, right? And they're trying to live out some misplaced 70s punk rock lifestyle, right? I mean, it's like, that's not it. There's something else going on. And I think the biggest flag on the field for that, especially in the context of opioids over the last 10 years or so, has been the massive shift to white, upper middle class, specifically female users of opioids that predominantly had been found used in communities of color that were impoverished and very urban. It's now become a very suburban drug for wealthy kids. And the thing is, nobody wakes up in the morning saying, today's the day I'm going to go be an opioid addict, right? It's self-medicating in many forms like something else, right? The reason we call them opioids is because they match up well with our opioid receptors, right? They go hand in hand. It's feeding something in the brain that otherwise isn't working properly on its own. I think a lot of that comes from despair and sadness, and that's the part we're not dealing with. Off to commercials, Hank.
This is 508, Worcester's Libertarian Voice. We'll be back in a second with more.
Let's keep talking to Facebook, though.
Yeah. This is a good time to use the Facebook time on.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that bums me out. And I think it's not to say that I don't think everybody involved in these conversations does not care, right? But it's like, that just sounds so shallow. That's like, from a clinical, from such a clinical perspective to say like, hey, look, this Narcan thing, it ain't really working.
It's a nicely written study. They definitely talk in there about, we don't want to take away Narcan. We're just saying.
Yeah, it's not a solution whatsoever.
Right.
Whatsoever. I mean, it's a Band-Aid.
Let me tell you my takeaway from this study, which is that first of all, my takeaway is that actually I think maybe in the Northeast it's not working very well at all. This says whenever New York State is included, they see a larger increase in opioid-related mortality than in the rest of the Northeast than they did in the Midwest. But they're doing the numbers in weird batches. But my big takeaway in this is these error bars are huge. My takeaway is I don't know, there's probably a trend there, but it's not a huge trend. So honestly, increasing Narcan use is not increasing it a lot or reducing it a lot, or if it is, it's not doing it with much confidence.
Well, I think that's actually another big part of the problem too, is, and I think this is also where press hasn't necessarily done the best job of covering the subject matter, is the body of, the population of folks that are dealing with addiction, specifically opioid addiction, even though we're calling it an epidemic at this point, it's still a relatively small population of people.
Right.
I mean, historically, it's always been well under 1% of the American population. Before we started using the word epidemic, it was like 0.01.
We got 1 minute.
Keep going.
Okay. It was like 0.01% of the population, right? So I mean, it's obviously a difficult sample size to even start dicing up. You're not talking about a ton of people, which unfortunately I think is probably also why it didn't get a lot of attention in the past as an issue. It was mostly dealt with through the criminal justice system. I also think, unfortunately, that's why the attention has shifted focus, because the demographics have shifted focus, and suddenly a dominant demographic within the sub-demographic isn't one we typically put in front of judges, and that kind of makes people weirded out. And so how are we going to deal with things? But at the end of the day, people self-medicate for the same reasons, right? Because they don't feel well.
Yeah. This is something, I have in this conversation all the time when people are trying to analyze the problems, what's wrong with drug addicts or whatever. This is a nice theme song coming back into the commercial.
Nice.
Everyone loves him. He's all alone in the world. His mother and father weighed several hundred pounds, but little Ernie was born to be a mini pig, no bigger than the palm of your hand, no larger than a telephone, born to go through his entire life as a mini pig. Yes, the smallest pig in all the world, and he is here right now. Come in and see him now. Just 1 pound of bacon on the hoof, alive and here now, in the person of Brendan Maligan, Nicole Melone, and myself, Michael Benedetti. Hi, guys.
How's it going?
We're here for the final segment of the show. Do we want to keep talking about? I want to continue a point that I was making during the break to you, Brendan. Do we have a phone call? Is this from somebody we actually want to listen hear from?
Yeah.
All right.
It better not be one of your friends, Mike.
Okay, go ahead, caller. This is a mistake. Even doing this show is a mistake. Hi, caller. Yeah.
No, let's go back.
That's a great question. That's a great point. Thanks.
What were you going to say?
Noise, more noise. I was gonna say that whenever I get in weird arguments, not arguments, I get in weird discussions sometimes with people about addicts, because in some of my volunteer things, I end up dealing with a lot of people who are suffering through addiction. And I feel like even this paper maybe frames it as being like, well, addicts make their decision making process is
impaired or that they're making bad decisions or whatever. And I honestly see it as that their decision-making problems are probably not impaired, except to the extent that they actually have like organic brain damage. Their judgment is not impaired. The incentives that they are responding to are different than normal
Yeah,
people, and
absolutely.
the time horizon is normal. But if you say this is somebody, you know, like why is this person like getting drunk today and destroying their family rather than staying sober and not destroying their family, because they don't want to destroy their family. And it's like, well, within the time horizon of the next 3 minutes, they would much rather be drunk than and take the risk on the family.
Yeah.
And their problem is that they realize, like, I keep making these decisions based on the next 3 minutes, and I realize that this is, there's a big part of my brain that doesn't want to do this. But so I feel like you talk about self-medicating. I totally see this with people. Like, I think that there's so many people who have an addiction, and like, I just take a lot of inspiration from Rat Park and try to feel like, what I want to do is like show that I respect them and that I like them, because usually I do like them. And to the extent that the idea of sobriety comes up, just be like, yeah, you should probably like get sober or soberer because these drugs are messing you up. Like, not enable or encourage their addiction, but to also not just be like, well, you're stupid and this is why you're an addict, or you're dumb and this is why you're an addict, or you're an addict and you're dumb.
Right.
And then if they're like, well, now I'm going to go get high, to realize like, you know what, today may not be the day that they're going to get sober, and getting high this afternoon may be the thing that gets them through the night. And like, that may be a reasonable decision on their part.
Totally reasonable. And one thing I wanted to be clear on, because when you said it, it made me question the way I've been using the term. But when I say self-medicating, I don't mean that in any dismissive way, shape, or form. Like, I firmly believe that everything that all of us do at every waking moment of the day is some form of self-medication, whether it's going to the gym, eating, meditation,
Doing this show.
Absolutely.
It's all some form of.
This
Yeah.
show's like taking the worst drug in the world.
But the flip side of that too is going down the line of reasoning you were just discussing. I mean, yeah, saying somebody is making poor judgment or has poor decision-making patterns, I think, is dismissive of the idea that it's possible for anybody to have a perception and a focus on something that differs from the majority of society, right?
It's isolating,
Yeah.
We should really be trying to relate to them and being like, yeah, we're all self-medicating, we're all making silly mistakes all the time, and
Totally.
that's no different, like relating to people, like just, I don't know.
I don't look at
Not
my
isolating
son
them.
flipping through his Snapchat account and view that as any different from a psychological perspective from somebody who's an active drug user, right? Like, you're just looking for that drip
Feel
of
that.
serotonin and dopamine
Right.
from your brain.
Right.
And that's all that matters at that
Acceptance.
moment in time.
Yeah, and if your son was shooting up, you would be alarmed. You would be like, this is a drug versus Snapchat, which has a potential to really hurt your health, really hurt your life.
I would like to think that I would keep the sort of clarity of mind to recognize, though, that from a psychological perspective, it's actually seeking the exact
From a psychological,
same.
that's what I
Yeah.
want to say.
Right.
That it's right. That to me is the thing. Is to not be like, well, there's some people who are addicts and some people who are not, and the addicts just have a different pattern of mindset,
Right.
pattern of behaviors. And I'm like, not really.
And
Not
I think
really.
that's one of the things that as society as a whole still has a really hard time understanding, is that we know better now that it is really easy to train the brain, even if it is in a way that might be counterproductive to the majority in society. And I mean, you can poke around pretty easily on YouTube and find engineers from Facebook and other social media networks that talk just about that, right? How they're writing algorithms specifically to have the same triggers in your brain,
Just
the
like
same
slot machine
synapses.
designers.
Exactly, and it is addictive behavior.
Do we need to wrap up the show? We do.
That's it.
Everybody, thanks, Nicole. Thanks for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thanks
Good
for
luck
having
with
me.
good luck with the Vegfest. I'm going to be very excited to attend this year.
Yes, I'm excited to have you all. April 29th, DCU Center, 12 to 5.
Brendan, good
Good
luck.
seeing y'all.
Good luck with drug abuse and solving that problem.
I'll work on it. I'll get back to you.
Everybody home. We'll see you later. Bye bye. All right.
Sweet.